Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I'm going to be talking about hoarding. And you might have noticed that I'm wearing a lot of scarves today, and I'm just trying to illustrate a point. I don't know what the point is, but the point is that I'm a hoarder. I grew up in a family of hoarders. For those of you who don't know me, my parents were hoarders, and I grew up in a house that was not just cluttered with objects, like filled to the rim with objects. A lot of just stuff all over the place. The whole house was unusable because of that. And I was just trying to parse up why things become that way, and if I have those kinds of tendencies, and how does hoarding manifest in my life? Why has hoarding led to a lot of problems? All sorts of things. So, I mean, first of all, hoarding meant that I couldn't have friends over, that I couldn't, that we were ashamed of our house. I did show it to some friends in secret. I took them to my house when my parents weren't there, and I showed them, and they were like, very shocked. They don't judge me for it. I'm still friends with them to this day, but it's hard to understand if you're not living in it, because people are just like, oh, just declutter. It's not the same thing. Decluttering is a different thing than actually like needing to have like a shovel and like dumpster bags full of stuff and to like forcibly push it through the door. Like, it's a whole other level. So my parents still live in that house, and hoarding is a disorder that doesn't get better with age, it only gets worse. And I was sitting in my psychiatry lecture about the subject, and it really hurt me inside. You know, the way that when, people talk about a mental illness as if nobody with that mental illness is in the room. It's kind of weird. I mean, obviously they were being very respectful and such, but it was like, a lot of people don't have an idea of what hoarding looks like. So the closest that we come to is like, these television shows, and Marie Kondo coming to people's houses and doing her Marie Kondo technique. And I cannot watch hoarding series because it hits too close to home. It makes me like really embarrassed to just even think about it, and it awakes a lot of anxiety in me, a lot of anger and frustration about why it had to become this way, because I didn't choose to grow up in that kind of environment. And also the frustration of like not being able to clean because nobody taught me, and also I cannot help clean my parents' house because they're too stubborn about getting rid of stuff. And I don't want to be in a conflict with my parents. So there are a lot of emotions and difficulties around this. And I know my parents will never get better in this. And I've had to talk to my therapist about this. And they're basically, that just tell me, the people I talk to about it, there are two reactions. Either the reaction is, oh, but you can just go and help your parents, just go there with and start throwing things out, and go with a vacuum cleaner around. It's like, no, you're not understanding. First of all, you can't fit a vacuum cleaner in there. Because where are you going to put it, It's going to be on top of a pile of stuff. Secondly, if I started throwing out things, my parents will notice and they won't be happy with me. And they never forgive me. So what am I supposed to do in that situation, you know? And me just throwing out one thing it's not going to change the entire situation. I would have to do that 10,000 times in order for things to get slightly better at their house, because that's the amount of objects that are just lying in piles. So no, that approach I'm not into. But then there's the other approach, which is like, well, your parents live their own life and you go and you start your own life and you stay away from their house and their personal problems and you just go and live your own life, which is what I'm doing. But it's not easy, and that's the whole point of being a hoarder, basically, is that you have a hard time leaving things behind. That's the whole thing. I made a video about leaving people behind. Leaving things behind is very difficult. And so leaving people behind by extension is also difficult for me. Because first of all, hoarding is genetic. So I'm at much higher risk of developing hoarding than somebody who, even if I didn't grow up with my parents, I would still have the genetic component. Even if I grew up in a super clean house, I would still have hoarding tendencies more likely than somebody who didn't have hoarder parents. Now, I don't know why my parents became hoarders, and I was trying to figure this out. I don't really know. Hoarding often comes when you either because you have OCD, because there's the thoughts of like things has to be just right. You have to keep accumulating the things in order to have things just right, in order to alleviate anxiety, that kind of thing. Or it comes later in life, and that's like the sort that you are born with, pretty much. And hoarding usually develops when you're around beginning your teens, like around age 12, 13, I think I've read somewhere. So the tendencies start there, but it only gets worse with time. And that's interesting because like OCD develops during puberty and when you're a teenager as well. But so OCD and hoarding have had a correlation, and hoarding disorder used to be classified under OCD, but it's not anymore because they've realized that a lot of people have hoarding disorder don't have OCD. And often it's because they grew up in an environment where things weren't secure, where there was always a threat of losing something, or that they were in a traumatic thing happened, such as a family member dying or like losing something. Now, I don't know what trauma my parents have gone through, or if they have OCD, or if they have any mental illness or whatever. Something is not right. I don't know what it is, but something happened, and even though their parents weren't hoarders, they became hoarders. And now I'm at the extra risk of becoming a hoarder. Or maybe I already am a hoarder and just will see things becoming worse and worse as time goes by. The only treatment that is recognized for this at the moment is a CBT. But it's like, where are you going to find a CBT practitioner who knows about hoarding disorder? It's not like every CBT practitioner even knows what hoarding disorder is. So I try my best to not hoard things. I try my best to like throw things out or give them away once they're not needed. I do have the advantage that I am earning money, so I can't, like, it's not like I'm losing that much by throwing things away or giving them to people. But that is a risk factor for, poverty is a risk factor for developing hoarding disorder, because you need all these things that you're accumulating. Often the things that you're accumulating are things that were free, or things that are very valuable to you, because you can't afford to lose these things. So I did not grow up in a like poor environment, but I know that like my mom had to, like, her parents struggled a lot in trying to build the American dream for themselves. My grandmother was a seamstress, and my grandfather on my mother's side was became a mathematician, but he had to teach math from like the age of 16. He had to teach math on the weekends and in the evenings in order to support his family. So I think that's probably where my mom got it from, where there was always like this sense that things weren't going to be good financially. So this urge to like be stable, you know, to have these possessions so that you don't end up destitute, is a human trait, you know, but it becomes overly intense in her. My dad had a lot of money, but I don't know what happened there. His parents were really cold towards him, and I don't really like my grandparents from that side of the family. But I think that they had a tendency to accumulate things from different things. And then my grandmother was a big spender. So she would spend on extravagant things because she was rich. So she would spend on extravagant things, and my grandfather he wouldn't care. He would just let it happen. My dad is pretty much the opposite of that in that way, where he's very stingy on money, and he wants to accumulate all of this money in the bank. Now, I'm not going to reveal how much money he has in the bank, but it is a lot of money. Is he sharing it with us? No. He has very tight control over his own finances and over our finances. I try to just leave him out of my business, because there is a risk that he'll control that. So he has that controlling side of him where he wants to keep things to himself in that kind of selfish way. Now, I don't know why he got that, but but that it does contribute to his hoarding. My mom is more that she's always into, like, she wants to buy things to organize the mess. And then she ends up seeing something else that is like really exciting, and so then she buys that. So there are different processes, psychological processes at work when it comes to hoarding, but like together it's like terrible. I looked at pictures of what hoarding disorder looks like. It's like a series of several pictures of like level 1 hoarding is like, you know, you have a little bit of clutter. And number 2 is like they start building up piles of stuff, and then 3 and 4 and 5. And I was like, the house that I grew up in was almost at the top of the scale. Like the clutter was like blocking doorways. When I was in a medical emergency, when the firefighters came to get me out, they thought that like they were having a hard time like carrying me out because of the mess. we couldn't really use the oven because there was a lot of stuff on top of the stove, you know. I mean, right now the dishwasher doesn't really work, so my mom has had to use the bathroom sink. And the washing machine doesn't work, so my mom has to go to a laundromat. The fridge doesn't really work, so my mom just buys things, buys food regularly rather than like have stuff that we need to keep in the fridge for long periods of time. The freezer works, but more and more things are starting to fall apart. And like we have things in front of the heaters, so my dad does not let us use the heaters because there's a fire hazard. Like, I'm a little bit careful about what I'm revealing, but I'm just telling you guys like the biggest things. There are quite a few more things that aren't like completely okay about our home. So needless to say, I don't want to get to that point, but like it's scary to think that this might happen to me, you know. So I try really hard to not have this happen, and yet I buy things and then I get very anxiety, a lot of anxiety about buying things. And I'm like, okay, am I going to buy this? And no, I'm not going to buy it. It's like next time I move, this will be too big for me to transport. And it just, it's a lot, you know? And it's like, okay, I wanted to buy a weighted blanket, but I'm like, but I don't have a regular blanket. Like I have a regular blanket, but I would need a second blanket for like a guest, if a guest is staying. But it's like, yeah, but I'm not going to have guests staying. And so all of this, living under all this fear, of course, turned me into a crazy person, you know? So what I realized a few things during the course of this week. Because first of all, I went to that lecture and I was like, oh God, like don't reveal that you're a hoarder in front of your teachers and your fellow doctors. And like, they don't seem to be well informed about this because they haven't seen a lot of people who are hoarders. They told me, like they told us that, oh, we haven't actually met that many hoarders that are purely hoarders. They've met older people who live alone and who are blind and who start accumulating things, but they haven't actually seen hoarders. And like it's a rarity. And for me, that was my life. So, you know, I wanted to jump in and like tell my story, but like then I was like, no, I don't want to. It's really embarrassing. So I'm doing it on here on YouTube for everybody to watch, but rather that than tell my colleagues. But I realized a few things. First of all, there's this thing that I also hoard things online. So it's not material things. It's not things that I pay for, but these are online collections. So these are files in the cloud, or they're videos on YouTube, or likes on Tumblr. And I actually went on those websites and wanted to report the number of things that I have saved online for like literally no reason. Like I never check these things. Let's first look at YouTube. In my watch later, I have 89 videos. Okay, it's like I have a lot of bookmarks. I mean, I didn't find a way to look at how many bookmarks I have, but I have watch later 89. I have a playlist of video essays with 199 videos, an ADHD playlist with 356 videos that I've actually watched all of them. Crochet, I have 59 videos that are saved for later, basically, because I haven't looked at them. And I have currently 260 videos on YouTube on my channel. Now, on Spotify, I have 12,969 liked songs. Like, am I ever going to look at that playlist ever? You know? I have a lot of playlists. I don't know the number. I went on 8-Tracks back when 8-Tracks closed. I basically downloaded like hundreds of playlists from 8-Tracks to, I pushed them over to Spotify. And I tried to make an organization system, but basically there are a lot of videos that don't fit these. So there are a lot, like there's probably hundreds of playlists that are outside of the system. But Outlander videos, 63, Celtic, 322, French playlists, 74, Nostalgia, 33, Witchy Aesthetic, 44, Gay with 3 Ys is 68, Sad, through exclamation point, 101, TJLC, that's basically Sherlock videos, 95, Hogwarts House playlists. These are playlists, mind you, these aren't songs. 166, Luna Lovegood, even she gets her own playlist, like category, 18 playlists. Tumblr playlist, 11, INFP playlists, 128. So these are all playlists that I have saved, but I haven't listened to all of them, obviously. Like, I'll never have the time in the world to listen to all of them. And then my Tumblr likes are 64,397. Posts on my primary blog, 53,320. Drafts, 114. So I am a hoarder, okay? I'm a hoarder, but for internet things, so it's not something that other people see. I hoard stuff in my house, but it's not to the same level of my internet hoarding. So why do I do this? What is the problem? What's going on? I don't know, but I started to realize that I like having something to go back to. I can't let things go. And even if I never go back, I need to have the possibility of going back. And that's why, like, it kind of feels like a safety that when I go back home to my parents, all the things that I had are still going to be there. The things won't have disappeared. So when I was so angry at my coworker for like organizing my workspace at my work, it's because, like, I know where things are and there's a kind of stability in that. And so not knowing, like, knowing that things are going to stay the same is very comforting for me. And so changing something is very difficult. For example, cutting my hair is letting a piece of me go, kind of, you know? It's kind of like, you know, it will take me more than a year to return to the state that I am in now. So there's a lot of, like, the past and the present. And so if I come back, like, if my parents move, which won't happen, if my parents move, then I'll suddenly be very, very disoriented, you know, because I won't have that place to come back to. And I realized that I am extremely privileged to have a place to go back to. A lot of people don't. A lot of people, either they don't have a good contact with their parents, or their parents have moved to another city. Their childhood home has been destroyed for one reason or another. And this reminded me of a situation which I had, this must have been 2022. Basically, when Afghanistan, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, I was working in doing my internship in the south of Sweden, and basically it was like, it felt like the end of the world had come, because, well, it's been the end of the world for 3 years now or something. I mean, since 2020, everything is pretty bad. So it's like, okay, well, COVID is terrible, and well, there was the Ukraine. So Sweden was worried about Ukraine because, so this must have been the beginning of 2022. They were worried because Ukraine was going to be, was taken over by Russia, and that Sweden would have to fight, or like Sweden would be invaded through Finland. There was a lot of worry about that. It was like, okay, the end of the world is coming, basically. And a lot of people were like making like bunkers and stuff. And I was just thinking, if something happens, I'll go back home to my parents in France. And I'll take it from there. And also Sweden is, I think at the privilege that it has been neutral for many years, and the risk of Sweden being in a conflict is small. The only problem is that Sweden doesn't have enough natural resources or stuff to manage on its own. But I know how I've gone on a tangent here, but the thing is, I was like, yeah, well, I think that if Sweden has to go to war with Russia, I said I think that I'll go back to France. And then there was a girl who she was from Afghanistan, and she said, "Oh, lucky you," because she can't go back to her home country. And I was a little bit, taken aback by the bitterness in her voice, but I realized, like, yeah, I actually am pretty privileged to have that option of going back, which a lot of people don't have. And so if I didn't have that option, suddenly the world would make a lot less sense, and I would be very confused and scared, and I think that is a reason why I'm an Enneagram 6. Okay. There is this search for stability, which I'm not getting, and I'm not getting it by hoarding. I'm not getting that stability, but it's a false sense of comfort, It's like, oh, well, if these objects are there, then, or these playlists or whatever, I can always go back to them, and I'll be like how it was in the past. I don't need to meet the unknown, because there'll always be this Spotify playlist in case something bad happens, or in case I become a different person. If I become a different person, I'll always have the past to rely on. It's weird how everything is connected to one another, but it's like, so my parents are physically hoarders, and I'm slightly a little bit hoarder tendencies, physically, but I'm very digitally hoarder and mentally hoarding. You talk about mental decluttering and stuff, and I've become much better at letting things go as I've talked in my previous video. I've gotten much better at that. But I think that everything in my upbringing was teaching me to always hold on to things. And things meaning people, things meaning... So I'm always the person who's like texting my French friends from my school years to meet up. And they're like, oh, we never talk to each other outside of when we meet you together with other people. Like, they never have high school reunions outside of when I come and get these people together. And it's because I need just the idea of them being there, even though like they have completely separate lives from mine, you know, like we meet like once a year maybe, and maybe we'll text each other a few times every few months or something, but they're just like remnants of a distant past, which if I lose, I suddenly feel very vulnerable. Like, what is happening? If I lose them, then suddenly I could lose that, and suddenly I could lose everything. And that's where I think I got the Enneagram 6 from. Now, why my parents became hoarders, I don't know. I still am confused about that. But, I mean, my mom's dad died young, when my mom was young, but it wasn't like, I can't really couple chronologically. I don't know when my parents became hoarders. It's just like, I mean, it seems like when they first met, they weren't hoarders. And none of my mom's brothers are hoarders. So something happened and something went wrong on the way. But I'm a product of that, but at the same time, I'm trying to escape from that. And escaping from that means a lot of work on my part, which is managing hoarding in the physical world, but also in the digital world, and in the end, in my mental world, you know? Getting free, you know, from the past, getting, you know, not being so attached to so many things. Because, you know, it's almost like Buddhism, you know, like, why are you so attached to things that bring you suffering? You know, it's not like these things, you know, so you have to make sure that these things bring you joy. But it has to be like a meaningful joy. It can't just be like, oh, this thing brings you joy. Because everything brings me joy, you know? A lot of things bring me joy. But they also bring me a lot of anxiety sometimes. So I'm doing my best here and now to deal with my physical hoarding tendencies. I try my best to deal with not adding to my digital hoards, even though I still do. And letting things go. And knowing that everything is just waves, everything is just a phase. Time isn't real, you know? I can still remember the person I used to be without having all of these things to remind me of who I used to be. All these mementos. I don't need them. I don't need them if I can just have joy from the memories and keep moving on and creating new memories. So this video, it starts on a good, but it diverges into 10,000 things. But it seems like it's a core part of who I am, which maybe, you know, together with a lot of other things, has led to a lot of my problems. Obviously nothing in itself explains all the problems you have in your life, but like it is a core part of my upbringing and a core part of my psychology that goes beyond just like the, you know, the concrete black and white, like, oh, you just have a huge piles of stuff everywhere. It's much more complex and deep than that. It goes to the recesses of my brain, you know. So I know that this topic is maybe not relatable to a lot of people, but I know that a lot of us do have hoarding tendencies, which is not a mental illness or a dysfunction, you know, in our lives. But I'd like to know what you guys think, because I don't think I'm the only person who collects things or, you know, needs to deal with decluttering, either physically or mentally. So have a great day, everybody. Bye.